And here is disconnect people, products and processes with environmental, economic and social dimensions. And where does sustainability lies? In this one, we have this open cycle, open that in like a linear, like arrangement of like a sourcing of raw material production, like a packaging, distribution, uses, consumption, disposal, etc. And here we have this closed cycle. So cradle to cradle approach you may be aware of. Okay, this approach actually talks about exactly this thing. Well, cradle to cradle, it means like by word definition I'm talking something which has come from like wherever it has come from, and it should go back exactly over there. That's cradle to cradle. And for example, any like a organic like a item, any organic entity dies, for example maybe an animal or maybe a tree or maybe even human beings. Okay, if you just leave it in the nature as it is, it's going to decompose, degrade, and like finally it will kind of like a vanish. Okay, so where did it go actually? If you want to look back and analyze, okay, it went back to the molecular level of this of this planet. Okay, and it may exist like somewhere. So that approach actually is called as like a closed like a loop, like a cycle or closed cycle like a approach of LCA, in which we try actually bringing all of those discarded like a things from this last stage to the very first stage of like a sourcing of resources and stuff. And how this well-being, ecosystems like a well-being plotted against like a human well-being works. So at this relationship we can see the good sustainable one is coming at the top, where we have a good rating of ecosystems well-being and good rating of like a nations or humans like well-being is also there. Okay, and if you start gradually coming down, okay, it goes up to the bad and unsustainable one like this category also. Some of the countries are listed over here, you can check related to this resource. So there are particularly no countries coming into this almost sustainable and good sustainable category, but we have a few beginning like a medium category by Sweden and Norway. Then we have US, Germany, Japan, India, and then at the last one, like bad unsustainable one, we have Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia, and borderline Spain. Here in this one, what is biocapacity? If you want to know, biocapacity is the capacity which like a planet or maybe any entity like a any such entity actually possesses to maintain its like a ecological like a balance involving all like a species of like a beings living beings like plants, animal kingdom, plant king, like an plant kingdom, and other like non-living entities also, for example air, water, like soil, etc. Okay, so this is like a one like a reference from where I have taken this. So population multiplied by consumption per person multiplied by resource use intensity multiplied by resource use inefficiency, you get ecological footprint. Okay, and area into bioproductivity is biocapacity. So till here, if it has kind of lasted, then all of it like a range which is going beyond like this, they don't like it, like the researchers don't like it, and this goes in the overshoot. Okay, so you see this term. Okay, as per like this year's like a data. Okay, there was an overshoot of like a 79 million per square kilometer, like that much of like a earth's like a surface of land is needed like a more. Okay, so that is one like interesting like a finding. Here there is a huge contrast in the previous like a section we discussed, like how humans are responsible, but perhaps not humans. Like a certain countries, and in countries also, like a certain like a people from urban areas, cities for example, are like a majorly responsible, not the villages and like a semi-urban places perhaps. So how this can be a problem of all the humans, and why all the humans are bearing actually the burnt of it. Okay, so that should be actually particularly dealt with, like a like a strict this thing, that the polluters should be punished, not every human, because the plight of this planet, actually every human is facing it, right? So how this can be reduced to those who are causing all of these nuisances. So if everybody wanted to live like like people in industrialized countries, we would need 4 planets. So is that the bottom line? You can like understand, compared to the like a lifestyle, of what kind of like a grade of lifestyle like these developed countries have, and underdeveloped countries have. Okay, so there is a huge disparity between this group to this group. Okay, this global north and global south phenomena, if you search, okay, you will get to see a lot of such like examples, how societies, how countries, even they are like economically very strong and very nice and all, but there are like a challenges at ground level, which proves everything redundant if it is not properly addressed. Moving on to this next section, transition from MDGs to the SDGs. Well, Millennium Development Goals. So SDGs we are studying under like this course, and this was launched in year 2015. Okay, but even before that, like the efforts were made, and efforts are being made for last like maybe couple of decades, maybe half a century, or even perhaps even more than that, in some form. Okay, maybe not exactly in this form what we have today, but this has evolved over time, which has taken cues from the all previous ones. Okay, and this is why it is essential to look at the previous ones also. Okay, to understand at which pace and like rate the whole thing is evolving, and then again even in the present one, what are the like a missing things, what are the like a lacunae, and how we can plug them. So with that right attitude in mind, okay, these MDGs were launched like a long back. So just we will see in September year 2000, leaders of 189 countries gathered at United Nations headquarters and signed the historic Millennium Declaration, in which they committed to achieving a set of 8 measurable goals that range from halving extreme poverty and hunger to promoting gender equality and reducing child mortality by the target date of 2050. So MDGs were supposed to be like implemented only till year 2015. Okay, but that year is gone. Okay, and still there is a lot like a more to do in the villages areas, even in the urban areas, and all of these places. Okay, so these MDGs actually became like a handy to help them. What are those MDGs? You can see over here there were total 8: eradicate extreme poverty and hunger, achieve universal primary education, promote gender equality and empower women, reduce child mortality, improve maternal health, combating HIV/AIDS, malaria and other diseases, ensure environmental sustainability, lastly, develop a global partnership for development. Further, the MDGs were revolutionary in providing a common language to reach global agreement. The 8 goals were realistic and easy to communicate, with a clear measurement monitoring mechanism. Substantial progress has been made regarding the MDGs, and the world has already realized the first MDG of halving the extreme poverty rate by 2015. However, achievements have been uneven. The MDGs are set to expire in 2015, and the discussion of a post-2015 agenda continues. The focus is now on building a sustainable world where environmental sustainability, social inclusion, and economic development are equally valued. The MDG Fund contributed directly and indirectly to the achievement of the MDGs. It adopted an inclusive and comprehensive approach to the MDGs. The approach was guided by the Millennium Development and its emphasis on development as a right, with targeted attention directed towards traditionally marginalized groups such as ethnic minorities, indigenous groups, and women. The Rio Plus 20 conference, the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development in Rio de Janeiro, June 2012, galvanized a process to develop a new set of sustainable development goals, which will carry on the momentum generated by the MDGs and fit into the global development framework beyond 2015. In the interest of creating a new people-centric development agenda, a global consultation was conducted online and offline. Civil society organizations, citizens, scientists, academics, and the private sector from around the world were all actively engaged in the process. Activities included thematic and national consultations, and the My World survey led to the United Nations Development Group. Specialized panels were also held and provided ground to facilitate intergovernmental discussions. The UN Secretary General presented a synthesis of the results of these consultation processes. So you can see from the first one to this one, a tremendous effort was made, in which researchers, experts, and practitioners, like NGOs, like research organizations, most of the people, who are, working into such areas were actually invited to be the part of it. Okay, so this is an collaborative, like an effort you can see. So collaborative effort to deal with the, like such catastrophes, like such, like imbalances which has been, like getting observed in the recent years. Okay, and how to deal with them. So those, like action points were actually prepared. In July 2014, the UN General Assembly Open Working Group (OWG) proposed a document containing 17 goals to be put forward to the General Assembly's approval in September 2015. This document set the ground for the new SDGs and the Global Development Agenda spanning from 2015 to 2030. So remember these years. Well, what are those 17 SDGs? That list is given over here. The SDG Fund is the first cooperation mechanism specifically designed to achieve the future SDGs, building upon the experience and lessons learned of the previous MDG Achievement Fund 2007-13. The SDG Fund intends to act as a bridge in the transition from MDGs to SDGs, providing concrete experiences on how to achieve a sustainable and inclusive world post-2015 through its integrated and multidimensional joint programs. Let's watch this video.
In the year 2000, leaders from 189 countries agreed on a vision for the new millennium. They wanted to end extreme poverty in all of its forms. So they made a list of 8 goals, called the Millennium Development Goals, and they wanted to achieve these goals in 15 years. One of the leading organizations working to fulfill these goals has been the United Nations Development Program, or UNDP. We're present in more than 170 countries and territories. We championed the goals so that people everywhere would know what they were and how people could do their part. We funded projects that helped fulfill the goals. We helped countries accelerate MDG progress by breaking down the silos and working across sectors. We acted as scorekeeper, helping countries to track progress. As a result, the number of people that live on less than $1.25 per day has dropped by more than half. The number of primary school-age kids who don't go to school, down by almost half. The number of people getting life-saving treatment for HIV increased by over 15 times. Child mortality, down by almost half. As much progress as we have made together, there's still a lot more to do. Over 800 million people are still living on less than $1.25 a day. 1 in 9 people on our planet goes to sleep hungry each night. Deforestation remains alarmingly high in many countries. Oceans are becoming more acidic, threatening food security and marine ecosystems. And about 1 of every 6 adults in the world is illiterate. 2/3 of them are women. We think those are tough numbers, and so do leaders from the countries where we work. So in September 2015, they agreed on a new set of goals to help finish the work we all started in 2000. The new goals are called the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. We have made significant progress in the last 15 years, and we think there's plenty of room for hope, for action in the next 15 years. Today, the world is more connected by technology. We know more about how to balance the 3 pillars of sustainable development: social progress, economic growth, and environmental protection. However, our climate is changing. Our planet is transforming, and there are more people on Earth than ever before. We at UNDP believe everyone can have enough of what they need living within our planetary boundaries, and we are working around the world to make this happen. Our goals to reach by 2030 are to eradicate extreme poverty, protect our environment, and much more. UNDP has 50 years of experience working with countries to make this a more prosperous, healthy, inclusive, and sustainable world. Join us.
History of the funds, from how MDGs to the SDGs, it has moved. That's what we can see in this video. This UNDP World Bank report pulls together the main lessons learned from the MDG reviews for the UN system and for its engagement at the country level, which took place at the UN System Chief Executive Board for the Coordination (CEB). The reviews, which brought together UN and the World Bank Group staff, systematically identified the country situation, the bottlenecks to the MDG attainment, and the potential solutions to the implementation. Since many MDGs have been absorbed into the Sustainable Development Goals, many of the observations and solutions provided could prove useful to the implementation of the SDGs. So how it worked, the funding is very essential because SDGs, MDGs, they are coming from the United Nations, okay, and it is getting implemented at different countries in the different places, rural areas, urban areas, and all of those villages and towns, okay. So who is going to fund it and for what? Okay, so this actually a framework actually helps identifying the particular countries a funding and other action plans for the regular developments, okay, in sync with the World Bank and many other funding resources, and combining them so that the efforts put up by all of those different stakeholders and agencies can be channelized into one as a common very strong a force, and can be put for the achieving that particular target under that particular SDG. Okay, so this is what it does. I hope it is clear now, and this is an illustration which talks about this transition. Initially there were 8, now we have 17. Perhaps in future, when the new set of goals will be coming in by year 2030, we may have even more, right? Who knows? Maybe if we are able to fulfill or solve one of these, okay, maybe that can be removed, right? So that will be, I think, based on the assessment and evaluation at that particular time. 16 countries from across the world and a sub-region of the Pacific Island countries took part in the CEB reviews addressing several different MDGs. These strongly advocated for cross-sectoral and cross-institutional thinking within the UN system to accelerate progress on off-track MDG targets. Bottleneck analysis proposed under the MDG acceleration framework helped UN system organizations fully appreciate that investing in solutions within a particular sector may be necessary but not sufficient to gain enough momentum to meet a particular target. The CEB reviews showed that significant gains were possible when agencies came together to support an acceleration goal. Country teams improved the alignment and the coherence of UN system activities on the ground, bridged sectoral silos while still valuing the specialized expertise of individual agencies, and more effectively advocated with governments and other partners. High-level coordination between UN country teams and World Bank country offices was repeatedly recognized as an accomplishment. 3 main conclusions clearly apply to the transition from MDGs to the 2030 agenda. First one, support cross-institutional collaboration between the UN system and the World Bank. Second, advance better understanding of cross-sectoral work and the interrelatedness of goals and targets. Third, promote global and high-level advocacy. Any comparison between MDGs and the SDGs need to start with the fact that SDGs are by far a more collaborative oriented framework. We can see that in some of the key differences highlighted below. Groups of technical experts were brought together at the UN to develop and give form to the MDGs in what was mostly a top-down process. The SDGs, on the other hand, was designed using a massively collaborative approach that took into account input from key stakeholders across the globe, including 193 member states, scientists, private sector actors, and many more. CSOs, civil society organizations, were also involved into this thing, and they were the key part. For example, community-based organizations, NGOs, etc., were involved from the get-go into the development of the SDGs. There have been further calls since then to keep them engaged and at the forefront of the strategic agenda, because these are very crucial the moment you go for the implications, or the applications. Okay. So while implementing these, the local, bodies which are, aware of, a nitty-gritty of, that particular place and the context are very essential, for effective implementation. Engagement from rich countries versus poor. The MDGs model was heavily focused on encouraging funding and initiative building coming from richer countries to benefit poorer countries. The SDGs, on the other hand, call upon all countries to generate internal strategies for goal progress, while looking for ways to collaborate across borders to amplify the impact of those national strategies. Goal 17 of the SDGs, Partnerships for the Goals, was included to specifically emphasize the need for a collaborative approach amongst impact areas, across impact areas between different kinds of organizations, etc. The final key difference, which also brings us to the reason why impact strategies had to be adjusted and continue to evolve, is the fact that the MDGs were halfway goals, while the SDGs are zero goals. In other words, the MDGs were meant to bring us closer to a world without poverty. The SDGs are meant to get us all the way there. Getting a zero had translated impact strategy from focusing on the easier problems and or solutions to getting after the more complex systemic issues at the root of the poverty and other social or environmental ills. Logistically, this means focusing less on aid and more on empowerment and systems change. Like how MDGs worked were based on the aids. But such aids actually cannot continue for forever, right? So how this mechanism can be created right at the place, and how this can be empowered, how the people, societies and countries can be empowered to bring this system change, because this is long lasting. If you are efficient, if you know how to fish, you can fish in any day, right? Unless you don't know, how to fish, then you will be looking for some aid to give you a fish. Okay. So of course the second one is a desirable situation, and this is where SDGs actually became effective. Here are 4 strategic changes that impact leaders have had to make and will have to keep getting better at if we are to live up to the ambitions we set forth as a global community at the outset of the SDG journey. So we will see all of them. The response to the need for systemic change has been a call for partnership among key players across ecosystems. The response to the need of systemic change, led by initiatives like the United Nations Global Compact and the Partnership Platform, the move from send aid to let's empower each other has led to the huge social impact returns. In line with finding alternatives or ways to implement traditional aid models, there have been a push for countries to generate their own new sources of revenue to help fund the development and implementation of SDG-aligned programs and initiatives. In other words, instead of relying on development assistance and or public money, nations have taken a more serious approach to create financing models of their own wherein capital can flow into national projects as investment dollars. This, of course, can also help spur economic growth, leading to better outcomes across the board, employment, health, education, etc., etc. So there are like a multiple like a benefits at different like a dimensions. The MDGs severely lacked monitoring, evaluation, and other frameworks for impact accountability, like how to assess, how to like correct, how to rectify like a certain things. Those were the like a lagging points over there. The SDGs, on the other hand, pushes us to manage impact data, ensuring its quality and timely acquisitions. So you are able to measure it, you are able to gauge it, you are able to rectify it, right? So it forms you a kind of like a loop, feedback loop. Right? You know what is feedback loop. The 169 targets and 230 indicators that come packed with the SDGs are just a start. Impact leaders have had to work together to figure out efficient and innovative ways to acquire, manage, analyze, and report on data aligned with the SDGs. The impact insights gleaned from reliable data are, well, much more reliable. This enables impact practitioners to learn and improve programs, eventually improving outcomes for beneficiaries. With all of this data and a move towards more financing of development initiatives, impact investors have taken a more leading role in the SDG charge. The 2019 Annual Impact Investor Survey by the GIIN found that more than 60% of investors specifically track their investment performance to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, driven by a desire to integrate into a global development paradigm. Encouraging investment capital to flow more freely into this development paradigm will only continue to strengthen nations and strengthen impact outcomes. So how the dollars, how the like a currency can be invested into like this thing. Okay, so that mechanism to take care of it, so that like a timely, like accountable, and a mechanism which can be evaluated and assessed by the investors who are putting in money can be actually created. Coming down to the final points, from 8 goals to 17, from a top-down approach to one of the biggest collaborative efforts in human society, the shift from the MDGs to the SDGs has been a slow but steady realization of human potential to work together for the greater good. So working together. So in SDGs, one of the like a very interesting like a points is to work like a together, this collaboration we saw, right? We have not just been able to refine the objectives we are aiming for, we have also seen the power of collaboration at work and have been able to adjust our impact strategies as a global community to really address and solve problems on a systems level. So let me quickly draw a sketch. If these are the stakeholders, they are definitely interconnected. Maybe not all are connected to each of these, but many more connections, and things like that. Okay, then there is interrelationship, what is happening between this and this, this and this, right here and all. And with this assessment, you can pinpointedly find out where is the like a lacune, where is something which is going like a below the like a targeted like a this thing, and you can take like this corrective measure, this tailor made like a measure, corrective measure right at the like that needed like a spot. It helps like, so this is this like a systemic approach we saw like here. Well, we are not there yet. There is a lot of work to be done to keep up the inertia we have built up across the globe, but with the data revolution that is underway, along with the emergent collaboration and financing models and the force of impact investing being introduced more fully into the development sector, a brighter future is becoming more feasible reality. So SDGs definitely carry like immense potential to formulate this mechanism out of those 230 like a targets and action points, and all of them like coming together, 169 targets. Okay, so it's an amazing set of like actionable points. Let me write it here: actionable points which any country, any society can take up and frame their policies around it. Channel their like investments and funds like around this to achieve those like a formal like targets efficiently. Okay. So this is all about transitions. Yeah. So with this, I have come to the end of this module 2. Thank you all for joining. See you again.